Anyway, it is 10 o'clock, so just for everybody's information, if you haven't looked up at the screen and you'll see JJ Waldham will be attending the Pine County Board meeting remotely, according to Minnesota statute 13D.02. And with that, we will call the meeting to order and rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
We do have people that are watching the live stream. So and JJ is remote. So if you're presenting something, please step up to the podium so everybody can hear. You're hearing us all right, JJ?
Yes, I am, Steve. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody here wish to speak in public forum? All right, we have no requests from the Zoom audience. We'll look to adopt the agenda. We got a couple minor corrections, I see.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, on consent agenda item number 3A on that permit, on the agenda, it just had an incomplete year. It should be 2023. All of the information in the packet was correct. And then on regular agenda item number 2, the resolution number is 2023-19. It was printed correctly on the agenda, but on the actual resolution, it was incorrect. So that resolution is 2023-19.
All right.
I'll make a motion for the agenda as corrected.
I'll second. Motion by Lundgren, seconded by Ludwig. Approve the agenda as corrected. Any discussion? Not Debbie, you want to call the roll?
District 3, Commissioner Lundgren. Aye. District 4, Commissioner Waldham.
Yes.
District 5, Commissioner Ludwig.
Aye.
District 1, Chair Holland.
Yes.
Thank you.
I believe I didn't probably mention this after we called the meeting order, but Commissioner Moore is en route. I thought he was going to be here by the time we got done with the pledge, but I lied. He'll be here shortly. Approval of the following minutes for publication, the March 7th regular county board meeting and summary, and March 14th special meeting of the committee of the whole.
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Motion by Ludwig, second by Lundgren. Any discussion?
19.
If not, Debbie, you want to call the roll?
District 3, Commissioner Lundgren. Aye. District 4, Commissioner Waldham.
Yes.
District 5, Commissioner Ludwig.
Aye.
District 1, Chair Holland.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then the minutes, boards, committees and correspondence, it's the Minnesota Management and Budget Notification of Compliance with Local Government Pay Equity Act of March 10th, 2023.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Gosh, got a motion by Ludwig, second by Lundgren. Any discussion?
It's nice seeing that we're 100%.
Yes.
Equity. I like that.
If not, Debbie, you want to call the roll?
District 4, Commissioner Waldham.
Yes.
District 5, Commissioner Ludwig.
Aye.
District 1, Chair Holland.
Yes.
District 2, Commissioner Moore.
Aye.
District 3, Commissioner Lundgren. Aye. Thank you.
Next is the consent agenda. You've had that in front of you for several days, so there are no questions. We look for approval.
I'll make a motion for the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Motion by Lundgren, seconded by Ludwig. Any discussion? Not Debbie, you want to call the roll?
District 5, Commissioner Ludwig.
Aye.
District 1, Chair Holland.
Yes.
District 2, Commissioner Moore.
Aye.
District 3, Commissioner Lundgren. Aye. District 4, Commissioner Waldham.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hey, we'll move on to the regular agenda, Personnel Committee report.
Want me to take it?
Doesn't matter.
All right, go ahead. If you're ready.
Okay. Yeah, we had a meeting on March 13th and made the following recommendations. Veteran Services acknowledge the resignation of part-time Veterans Officer Michael Harshman effective February 22nd, 2023. Position and job description are currently in review and will be brought back for a later date for approval and backfill. In the Sheriff's Office, acknowledge the resignation of Deputy Brandon Sell effective March 9th, 2023, and approve the backfill of the position. Any subsequent vacancies that may occur due to internal promotion or lateral transfer. In the Sheriff's Office Corrections, acknowledge the resignation of Corrections Officer Arian Grubbs effective February 25th, 2023, and approve the backfill of the position and any subsequent vacancies that may occur due to internal promotion or lateral transfer. And with that, I will make a motion to approve them three things.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Moore, second by Ludwig. We have any discussion, questions?
I just will make a comment.
Yep.
HR Jackie Coivus, who is just filled us in that she's working on she's doing exit interviews and stay interviews and stuff. So it's there'll be some good data come out of that.
Thank you.
I know we've talked about that before. So she's on that.
Any other questions? If not, Debbie, you want to call the roll?
District 1, Chair Holland.
Yes.
District 2, Commissioner Moore.
Aye.
District 3, Commissioner Lupgren. Aye. District 4, Commissioner Waldham.
Yes.
District 5, Commissioner Ludwig.
All right.
Thank you.
So next is it's Child Abuse Prevention Month. So we're considering approval of resolution 2023-19 proclaiming April of 2023 as Child Abuse Prevention Month in Pine County. And we're going to hear from some folks from HHS. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Becky Foss. I'm the Director of Pine County Health and Human Services. And with me today is Bonnie Radisky, Children's Services Intake Social Worker, which is a mouthful, and I had to practice that several times to get it right today. But let me explain what that means. So in the resolution you have before you, the first bullet points is that there were 857 child protection reports filed within Pine County in 2022.
Wait a minute now. 800?
857.
Holy smokes.
It's actually down from previous years, but it is a lot. But the reason why this is so important is because that is a lot of reports. And we know that child abuse can leave long-lasting impact on victims and their families. And so we want to do everything we can to prevent families from coming into our child protection system. But when we do receive reports, Bonnie is the individual who takes in those reports, or at least most of them. She's allowed to have PTO and days off. She needs that. We all need that. But she then enters them into SSIS, and we've had enough conversations about SSIS and some of its problems. So that in alone, probably she deserves sainthood for that, for working within that system as much as she does. And so with that being said, Bonnie's here to talk a little bit about some things she has for the board members and some things that we're doing in April to kind of celebrate the month.
When we talk about Child Abuse Prevention Month, there's a couple of things that come into play nationally. One of them you'll see is called the Pinwheels for Prevention program. And that's where a lot of schools will do coloring tasks with kids where they color pinwheels and they have coloring contests. It's just to kind of bring awareness to it. The other piece of it is it's represented in April by a blue ribbon. And so we have supplied our child protection staff, our children's mental health staff, public health staff, and several other departments within our agency with these blue pins. And I'm going to pass on to each of you. And as you will see, there is, we chose this one this year to have a feather attached to it to represent our tribal community and our partnership with Mille Lacs Band. And so I'm going to pass one to each of you for you to have for the month of April. And then we also ordered pins for all of our school professionals in the county. And those are going to be handed out next week to each of the school districts by our school social workers. We have school social workers who spend time in each of the buildings to kind of help foster relationships there. And several of our school districts in Pine County have also agreed to use their social media, their billboards outside their buildings, the electronic ones, to post messages related to Child Abuse Prevention Month, positive promotions, and statistical information regarding prevention. And the area newspapers have agreed to publish our proclamation that's in front of you should that get signed and authorized today. So we're trying to just amp up in our schools, newspapers, and social media how great prevention is to saving children from abuse in our. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys each of your pens.
Can I make a statement, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I was at a meeting
Thank you.
where Ms. Burdetsky did a presentation for the state of Minnesota stating how horrible the system is that she works on.
Thank you.
And Becky said that she takes vacation and PTO time, but really that's not quite true. She does not. When she does take vacation and PTO, she works. She is one of our extremely dedicated employees. And I just want to say that because I think it's important that she be acknowledged as being one of our best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for what you do. And I 800 and some kids, that's like 4 a day, work day.
That's 857 child protection reports. And what I want to have recognized is, yes, Becky acknowledged that that number is down. But I believe wholeheartedly that the reason that number is down is because the state initiated new policies in the last year and a half, which have now stated that instead of entering reports on the same family, so say I get 3 reports on the same family in one day, instead of doing those as individual reports in the social service system, we now compile them into one report and put all those into one SSIS. So that'll only ting once in this number versus 3 times. And so that is explaining why that number is down. And this isn't representative of 857 children. That's 857 families. And so those families can sometimes have up to 8 children, 1 to 8 children in our county. So I just, to adequately represent the work that our team is doing and working very hard at to stabilize families, I want that accurately represented.
Did they change that following our meeting with the state when they saw what you had to do?
No, that was changed during COVID.
Okay.
Like at the tail end of the pandemic.
So it's coming out of COVID now. I believe during COVID, we had a lower number of child abuse
Yes.
courts. Has that got back to pre-COVID level, or did people actually change the way they acted?
No, the numbers are back to what they were pre-COVID. It was jumped right back into it. And what I'm seeing is that the significance of the information in the reports has changed from very what we would probably call simplistic abuse to more significant, more traumatic, harmful abuses that we are noticing that are coming out through those reports. And I can't say if that's not good training with the school staff or other people who are working with them through trauma therapy, but the significance of the information in the reports is bigger.
It's a tough job. Thanks for.
Oh, that's gotta be a terrible job. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll consider that resolution.
I'll make a motion for resolution 2023-19.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Lovegren, seconded by Ludwig. Any questions, discussion? Not, Debbie, you want to call the roll?
District 2, Commissioner Moore.
Aye.
District 3, Commissioner Lovegren.
Aye.
District 4, Commissioner Waldham.
There, JJ. There we go.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. District five, Commissioner Ludwig.
Aye.
District one, Chair Holland.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
She's a good word.
Yes.
Okay, next we have a presentation of out-of-home placement report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Terry Fawcett, Pine County Probation Director. Are you moving things? All right, so a little bit of introduction on the upper left corner. Kind of talk about how factors taken into out-of-home placement recommendations. There's a pre-placement screening team that's put in place by statute. HHS, sometimes the families, probation officers, social workers, CD assessors, you name it, sit at that table. We use a risk assessment instrument, the RAY, used to determine whether or not a kid needs to remain in secure detention. That happens at their first appearance in court. Usually joint effort between the assistant county attorney and probation. And you will see in the data here that most of our kids don't remain down there very long, at least initially. Some reduction strategies, we have a whole host of them there in Pine County. Just a few that I'll touch on. The Evening Reporting Center, as you know, has been going now for about almost 3 years. That was extended during COVID. That grant ends at the end of September. However, we have been assured by the Department of Corrections that they'll contract with us after that to have a position, basically a halftime juvenile detentions alternatives initiative regional coordinator / ERC director. We've been working with state JDAI now for a couple of years. That'll be a great thing for Pine County. And so we'll start ramping that up somewhere around June to get that in place by the time the grant ends. Equine assisted learning, equine therapy. We have been doing that ever since I've been here in Pine County, but we've ramped that up a little bit here in the last several months. We're now incorporating some of that equine assisted learning in with our restorative justice work, which I think is awesome. I think it's just another positive step on trying to, kind of get to those kids and the power that horses can do that Terry Fawcett can't. So, PASS, Restorative Justice Circles. PASS stands for Prisoners as Teachers Helping Society. County Attorney Frederickson and I developed that in cooperation with the federal prison several years ago. COVID kind of shut that down. Their administration changed. We're now in the final steps with Moose Lake Prison and incorporating that PASS program with state inmates and our kids. And so stay tuned on that. Lower left corner, our budget. The probation budget itself over budgeted by 57,000. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. And a lot of that reason is starting here in the lower right corner is the budget busters. Identified of $20,000 or more per kid. Not going to get into the whole dynamics with these kids. Want to try to maintain as much confidentiality as possible, but kind of a common thread is mental health issues. One of them's a sex crime and failed out of several placements. So unfortunately, those are very expensive. The one on the top has been in placement for quite some time. The screening committee a week ago. He's transitioning to foster care and then hopefully extended foster care when the kid turns 18. I had that kid on diversion several years ago, and I can tell you from being on that meeting last week that sometimes change is slow, but I do believe that person's trending in the right direction. Another one, the fourth one listed there, something that was noteworthy. That kid had been both in the Northwest Juvenile Center and our own facility. Aged out, turned 18 while in the Bemidji program, went on run for 3 months, was ordered to a consequence program and had the choice of either being discharged from probation or remaining on probation. And he chose to stay on probation. So that doesn't happen very often. So the kid is actually still on probation till the 19th birthday, which would be about 3.5 months. So sometimes the structure that POs can provide is good. The top placements that we use are listed on the bottom. I did tour Boys Town, Nebraska a few months ago when I was out there for a conference. They're coming to talk to us here a little bit further at the end of the month. Statewide, we don't have a lot of places to place kids if we wanted to. And the other ones that might exist, I don't necessarily trust them. So we've developed good relationships with those places. A lot of our kids go to our own program down in Anoka, but there's some other reasons on why we use the other type of programs but they're limited. So our placements this last year, we placed, we had 48 placements, 35 kids for 48 placements. The average length of placement, 36 days. The average length increased over the last 3 years, however, still 63% lower than its average in 1996. So I think this county, the work between probation and HHS has really done a good job with getting that trending downward. But as you can see, out of 1,257 placement days this last year, 4 kids were responsible for 982 of those. So, but our average length of placement is 9 days. So again, going to that Ray, a kid gets picked up, they get put in the juvenile center, they have their first appearance, they're in and out of there in a matter of days, most of them. But that's all again based on the risk assessment and evidence-based versus just kind of a gut feeling of a PO. Placement types. And VOC secure, that's most of ours. That kind of identified below the juvenile center, Anoka County secure. So that campus of 100 beds there. They also have the non-secure part in the middle. The reason our group home numbers have trended up is that Village Ranch, Hutch House, 2 kids at Hutch House. Those are very expensive placements. So our expenditures this last year, they went up from the previous year from 201,000 probation placement to 378,000. Again, 4 kids responsible for most of that. All right, the use of the East Central Regional Juvenile Center. So about a year ago or less, we talked about this. Where are we going to recontract with them? And at the time, the membership was 9 beds at RJC. That membership now has 19 member counties. One of them is like 3 or 4 counties, is Prairie Alliance. But point being is, hadn't we re-upped, we would never place a kid ever. And I'm constantly in meetings with other counties that are totally in crisis because they have no place to place a kid. And then when you have a big incident like a few weeks ago down in St. Paul, where parts of St. Paul are shooting up each other, those kids get placed because they're dangerous. Well, law enforcement and judges don't care who's got a membership bed when somebody's just shot people. So they get placed. So they might get placed at the juvenile center in Anoka, and then a member might get bounced out of there because their kid's lower risk and they got a high profile kid that needs to be placed. So that happens.
Terry, if you can't find a place for a kid and that happen, does the kid get sent home and get a more intensive watchful eye from the PO? How does that work?
Yeah, we try. The good thing is Sherry Johnson in my office has close to 30 years of experience, and she's pretty good about, and her relationships are good about being able to have those conversations. She's one where, for example, Itasca County has an interim director that just had this question 2 weeks ago. Didn't know what to do. Hook her up with Sherry and Sherry will try to help her out. A lot of times those kids get put on GPS short term, but there are some of them that even GPS isn't appropriate. It's not appropriate, but The good thing about our membership is because they have about 100 beds campus wide down there. Sometimes if our kid has to get bounced out of their regular detention bed, they can still be held in a different bed on campus. Now, recently, we had a kid that got bounced from that. Now, because we had 3 kids down in the juvenile center at that time, and we only contract for 1. So sometimes that's going to happen. And the sheriff and I had talked about that, and sometimes you can't control it, but they are really good about working with member counties to try to keep our kids in there when they need to be in there. So, but it's definitely a lot more work than it used to be. It's just not enough places.
They had, Stearns County where they didn't have beds for their kids and they had nowhere to put them, so they had them in the probation department. And they spent nights in the probation office and they had staff that had to send them for the kids and working with the jail to get showers and food for them. So it's not a good situation that you guys are in trying to find places.
Yeah. We are underutilized we had 295 days of 365 last year, but this year we're trending right about using where we should be using in terms of not getting an extra bill at the end of the year, but those things usually work themselves out. So again, we had 356 days last year and now in 2021 and now 295 days. You can see the COVID year, only 57 days. So, using that risk assessment tool, home monitoring, which I just mentioned, non-secure detention, those are great strategies. I've mentioned this before. The big miss not only is we need more detention beds, but the business needs more non-secure detention beds, and there's just not enough of them. Commissioner Ludwig and I have talked because this was something that Anoka was moving to add, and then they had an incident on campus a few years ago before COVID. Then they kind of shut down that idea, and it hasn't been brought up since. And it's a real need, So we'll see what happens with that, but. Electronic monitoring. So we had 360 days of use of EM this last year with juveniles, 10 kids for 360 days. It cost us $4,400 for that, but we saved $94,000 in detention costs because of that. And over the course, since 2003, with that strategy, we saved over $1.7 million in placement costs by putting the kid on GPS or on electronic monitoring. So,
Mr. Chair. Yeah. So is that where your fees with some of that stuff? Or where, and because the legislative is, legislative kind of kibosh the fees, but I think the fees are a great tool. And I don't know if you can speak to that, because I know if a family or whatever doesn't have the money, you guys waive the fees and stuff like that. But how important is that?
Well, very important. Not so much here. So we have a line item in our budget where for monitoring fees. And so that's budgeted in, that's local corrections fee. Local corrections fees are on the adult side. And then, so when I give my annual report, I'll speak more to those because we not only charge for the local correctional fee, but then the other program fees that we have. It is a major issue.
I think it's just important for us to understand as commissioners, so we can give some feedback to people too. That I think for sometimes it gives skin in the game for the person too.
Yeah, well, prior to the meeting, Commissioner Helen talked about, talking with Representative Nelson, and you can't give money one place and then take it out on the other hand.
Yeah.
That's the exact fear with that, is if you sunset local corrections fees in 4 years, then what? Because if you don't have the money that makes up for that local corrections fees, and you've lost money. We take in about 60 grand a year in local corrections fees, which, if you don't count benefits, it's about a position. We collected more than that this year. My agents do a real good job of it. Some counties, million, Wright County ton of money. I don't, where do you come up with that money? Right? And so it's a major concern with directors are we going to feel good in May this year that we've gotten this other money appropriated? Only to then say you're going to take local corrections fees away?
Yeah.
So stay tuned.
Thank you.
Evening reporting center, I think it's at capacity right now. We're strategizing the need to separate clients by risk, needs, and responsivity right now, so we don't have low risk mixed with high risk. So sometimes they're going on different days. ERC completion and recidivism. Just a couple notes. If you look at the second bar, 13 didn't complete during that time frame, and 5 of those that didn't complete committed a new offense. But some of them get discharged for reasons that aren't problematic. 3 were discharged from probation, 3 were discharged to other programs, 2 moved, 1 opted out, which is HHS referral. We had 3 that were discharged due to attendance and then 1 for behavior. So most of them that are starting the program that aren't moving on to a different type of program are actually doing the program and doing well. So we'll have more data on the ERC as part of the annual report. Some highlights, again, more diverse referrals, so we have to be creative on what days and when we're doing those things. We did ask the superintendents this year if they wanted to keep that vaping intervention program as an option. They all said yes. We haven't had any kids referred to it, but they did want that option still to remain in the event that they did. And again, that grant that we got, $351,000, will go until the end of September. And the community alternatives, I think Pine does a good job of looking at other ways. So you talk about kids needing to be detained. I think we do a really good job of, if a kid's in lockup, it needs to be there, right? If a kid can be on the street, we're trying to get the kid on the street, and we're trying to work intensively with them. And having good community partners is a big part in that. And so the work with Changing Gates has been real good for us. That line item was 10,000. We reduced it by half for this year, but we'll see how that goes now that we have this partnership with Changing Gates. And that's it.
No.
Any questions?
Yeah. Just back up over the whole thing, because I'm looking at Becky, she's got an out-of-home placement budget. You got an out-of-home placement budget. I think I understand the difference, but can you enlighten me again?
I think you ask this all the time, and I always look back and I expect you to come help me out. Yes.
And again, so with the out-of-home placement budget within the Health and Human Services budget, most out-of-home placement line items are contained in the HHS budget. So those numbers you see where things are out with the secure detention, the out-of-home placement, those were all in HHS last year. So the difference this year is that we have, as a county, a contract bed space. So that is just a static number. It's not related to a child. So that has been shifted over to the probation budget. But the remaining items, other secure detention placements, if the kiddo is in a different secure detention, that comes to the HHS placement budget, as well as group homes, foster homes, when there's probation youth involved.
I think what I think is also noteworthy is once a year, when Becky's starting to get ready to work on her budget, she calls me and we sit down and we go over those line items specific to probation, and we work that together. What do you think? And then most of the time, I think we're right. Sometimes we have a different type of case, and then a line item is shot because we didn't put enough money in that line item.
I look at it as you guys are all on the same team, all of you people. And so I think we got paid a huge compliment last week when I was at the Capitol testifying on behalf of Pine Tech for some higher ed stuff. And Representative Nelson grabbed me by the arm and said, you know, you guys are really doing some good things there. Not me, you guys. And he mentioned Terry's name, which I know is all of you people. Because and we talked about that, if you pull one string, you got all these other strings that move with it.
Yeah.
And these kids are the same kids. Sometimes they're in this program, sometimes they're in this program. They came out of the same household, probably, same family situation. So my hat's off to you for explaining it to us enough so we can try to explain it to others. But I think you've hit a home run with our representatives, and they're the people that are hopefully going to put some more money in the pot so that we can do better things with these kids than we're doing. And I commend you.
Well, I appreciate that, Commissioner. I would say this, since I know he's online, is, Reese isn't here because he's down testifying today on a restorative justice bill, juvenile restorative justice bill that I've been active with Representative Feist. Sent a letter of support for that, where counties should get some financial incentive to do more restorative justice type work with kids. So it just gets back to the evidence-based practices, the old buzz term.
Yeah.
But it's really done in Pine County, right? It's internationally, restorative justice has very favorable data around the world. So if that's the case, then why aren't we doing it, right? So we can even place less and less kids. Because I always tell people, okay, so if we had more kids to place, where would we put them anyway, right? So we might as well figure out other ways of working with kids, because most of the time we can't place them if we wanted to. So I appreciate your comments, and you're right. Becky and her team have been great. But Reese is a big piece of that as well.
Right.
The county attorney to be willing to engage with county partners the way that he has it's been terrific. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Anybody?
Thanks, Terry.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you, Terry.
And special thanks to all you folks sitting over here on my left and right. Next, we're going to look at the subdivision ordinance, plating ordinance for Pine City Township. Caleb, you got that?
Good morning, yes. Little gear shift here. So I'm Caleb Anderson with the Pine County Planning and Zoning Department. Pine City subdivision and plating ordinance is before us today. So the Pine County Zoning Office administers review of subdivisions, land subdivisions, platted subdivisions throughout the county. A lot of times there is a township element of approval within those applications, those reviews. And we do that in 31 of the 33 townships in Pine County. But there is a new township that is wishing to do their own regulation of land subdivisions, and that's Pine City Township. So they adopted a moratorium approximately 12 months ago. They did a study on land subdivisions. They developed an ordinance, and now they've come to the Pine County Board because it states in the county subdivision ordinance that anytime a township wishes to adopt their own ordinance, the county has to review it and basically affirm that it is as restrictive as the counties. They can't go do something much less restrictive than the way we regulate land subdivisions. So they sent us their ordinance. We brought it through our zoning board. Reese reviewed it. I reviewed it. We kind of compiled a few edits. We sent it back to them. They've sent us another one. And so we vetted it now. And the county zoning board has basically adopted findings that states this ordinance is as restrictive as the counties. So as prescribed in our ordinance now, the county board is to adopt a resolution also affirming that same position. So we have ordinance or resolution 2023-06 stating that the township ordinance is as restrictive as the counties for you to consider approval of. In addition to that, the new subdivision ordinance adopted by the township seeks to regulate shoreland subdivisions, which makes things a little more complicated. Land subdivisions along lakes and rivers, because there's state regulations that we're obligated to enforce for those. So we kind of worked with the DNR some. There's going to be a little bit of a song and dance continuing when those land subdivisions come forward, where we'll work with the township. They won't be completely on their own in the review of these things, especially for floodplain as well. Because there are federal regulations kind of involved with the county reviewing land subdivisions in the floodplain, where there's more risk for, property loss and damage. So because of some of the complications, we developed a memorandum of understanding. It's kind of a playbook. So when developer John Doe shows up and says, I want to take this 40-acre piece, develop it into 35 lots, we know here's the township's responsibility, here's the county's, so that we are not scratching our heads and getting mad at each other. So we've developed that MOU. One thing we're asking for this morning is the authorization for our county board chair to sign the memorandum of agreement of understanding. So we have had their township attorney review that as well, and he had one minor change and we're on our way. Any questions for me?
So Reese did look at this, right?
He has.
Do you think it's gonna create, is it gonna be cumbersome, or do you think you're gonna be a smooth process?
I think it should be similar to how it already is, which is not necessary. It's a little bit clunky, unfortunately. Just when anytime a county has zoning regulations, in our case, we're required to by statute. But then a township also wishes to do that. It just requires a little bit more back and forth, which we already kind of have because that township has their own zoning ordinance.
So who has the authority if you disagree? What happens? Does that explain?
I missed it.
So in Minnesota statute 505, it requires counties to sign off on platted subdivisions.
You could stop it if you don't.
Yeah, so essentially it's concurrent authority. Both parties must be satisfied.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
So, and I know you can't speak for the township, but why? What, because they don't think we're doing a good enough? It sounds like it's more work for them. And or from my interactions with townships, they feel like the county is usually more overreaching. Like we're the big brother, where now they're trying to be more restrictive and more overreaching. If you want to promote any kind of development, wouldn't you try to make the red tape a little less and a little more streamlined? This just seems like more. I mean, if I wanted to develop, then I got to deal with the county, I got to deal with the township.
I think it'll be the same document though, probably.
But it's going to cost more time and money.
I worry about fees too. What happens there? Double?
They have a different fee structure than ours, and part of that is to cover themselves. A lot of townships use like an escrow where you pay a larger fee up front in case they have to consult their attorney, they charge it back to you. So ours is a little bit more transparent, where we have the county attorney's office on our team. So I guess to answer your question, there was a land subdivision in 2019, 2020 that was contentious in that township. And I think that spurred some of the dissatisfaction or desire for a little more control on making those development decisions.
And to kind of piggyback on that developer did everything he needed to do to satisfy the requirements.
We wouldn't have approved it if we didn't feel that was the case. Yeah. There is some subjectivity though.
Yeah,
there is some. So I think it's easy to take shots at another local government unit in their decisions when you're not the one legally liable for whatever approval or denial, So I always try to remind my colleagues at townships and cities to be mindful of that.
Yeah. And not to keep going on, but like on that, they had some input on that
For sure. You know, and you had to satisfy the requirements were met and that kind of stuff. So that's where I don't know. You know how I feel about that. And we can have more discussion at a different time. That's fine. I don't. Sure, yeah. Well, I mean, we just try to keep doing our best, learn as we go.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
So Caleb, I know if you have a plat, if I plat my land, it has to be signed off by a lot of people through the county and through the township and through attorneys and everything. If I just go in and I do a major split on my property, which we've had those also where that's we've got some up here on the Kettle River where their legal descriptions are horrible and they're just messy. Do they have to go through all the subdivision? It's not the same process. So how would that change for them? Just out of curiosity.
So there are administrative subdivisions where you're going to meet some bounds, lands description, and there are platted subdivisions, which are much more cumbersome, much more requirements for platted subdivisions. So their new ordinance, though, it very closely mimics what ours is. So I expect those landowners in Pine City Township should not see that much difference in that regard.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
So does our surveyor have to sign off then, or does the township have their own?
Their own.
And then does our surveyor have to review that?
No, and to be honest, their initial draft was solely township approvals.
Okay.
And as we've chatted more with attorneys in the DNR, we're pulling them more towards, there still needs, just the same way when we were the authority, they still had the opportunity to engage in the process. So we're kind of I look at this as just kind of a role reversal where we can't be completely hands off. So because there's a county approval, I think there's opportunity for us to circulate that internally for comments.
Okay, I'm good with that.
It took a long time. You did a lot of work.
Yeah, it was a bit of work. We're basically doing what have been doing.
Right.
So I'm looking for a motion to move
I'll make a resolution for 2023-06.
in the memorandum.
Yep.
You want to do them both at the same time?
Yeah.
Okay. And
I'll-
memorandum.
Any questions? Not, Debbie, you want to call the roll?
District 3, Commissioner Lofgren. Aye. District 4, Commissioner Volktown.
Yes.
District 5,
Yes.
Commissioner Ludwig. District 1, Chair Holland.
Yes.
District 2, Commissioner Moore.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Caleb. We'll move on to the opioid settlement update.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Dave Minke, County Administrator. So there's two agenda items that are closely related. They just ended up both on this meeting. They don't have to be done at the same time. So I'm going to give a high-level overview and turn it over to Sam, who's going to go through the presentation that she has prepared because it does give a lot of the background and the context of the whole program. And then there's two resolutions for you to consider. And so in the first resolution, what it is it's settlement with 5 additional companies. Those are Allegren, CVS, Teva, Walgreens, and Walmart. And what the resolution does is it approves the amended state subdivision agreement. It approves the participation agreement and release of claims with each of those 5 parties. And it authorizes the county attorney, Reese Frederickson, and other staff to execute all the documents necessary to ensure Pines County participation in those settlements. And there is a red line copy of the state settlement MOU in the packet. Those are changes from what was approved back in December 2021. And the changes are designed to incorporate these 5 additional settlements as well as any future settlements. And so if that is explanation enough on that first resolution, and certainly we could have questions after Sam and her team are done, if you're ready to get to her.
And then, Mr. Chair,
Me?
are we going to move these independently, these resolutions?
Yes.
Okay. I will move,
You want to let Sam
we can wait, yeah,
her
Yeah.
presentation, which ties everything together really well.
okay.
Like the enthusiasm. So I'm actually just going to say hi, and then you'll see me in a second again. I'm just going to introduce Drew, who's one of our investigators. He's going to go over some overdose death data, just other overdose drug use data, to kind of just set the scene of why we're having this conversation. Obviously, the settlement, we have to spend it at some point on something, but why are we doing this now in this time? He's going to kind of paint that first picture for you.
Morning.
Morning.
Obviously, my name is Drew Abramson, been with the sheriff's office for 15 years now. Spent the last 11 working violent crime and narcotics throughout here. This is just a very short snip of what heroin, fentanyl, and different things are, and what we're seeing is just a short 4 slides here to go over, and then we'll kind of go over their process and stuff with public. Just kind of a thing here. Obviously, everyone's heard fentanyl, heroin, different things like that. Just why is it so dangerous? Obviously, fentanyl is 100 times more potent and 50 times more potent than heroin. Just shows how potent it is. The drugs, the interesting thing I think of out of this whole thing here is that we have the 5% of the world's population, but we consume 80% of the world's opiates. Just kind of something to think about that way. And that you have with opioids, with heroin, with fentanyl, your tolerance increases until the level till most people become fatal, right? They have to use more to get to that next high. Every day you use, you have to use more to get to that high, to go through different things like that. Here's just kind of a chart from February that shows the last few years. The red are the deaths that we've had. You can see 2023 is on a rise. Technically, right now, we've had 6 overdose deaths since January 1.
In Pine County?
In Pine County.
Yeah.
Yep.
Holy
And then we're over, I think we're at 16 reported overdoses for the year already. So I mean, we're getting to already half of what we had last year almost already and stuff like that. So the deaths are on the rise. We had 7 weeks right away, right out of the gates.
So how many overdoses do you think that we've missed out on because people have Narcan available now? I mean, we know that you can't hide the deaths, but I know that a lot of people are using Narcan on a regular basis. So
To put a number on it would be extremely hard, but I can tell you that most people that are even calling in an overdose have already given 1 or 2 doses of Narcan before they're even willing to call, right? Because if they come back, a lot of people won't even call, right? Hey, we've tried 2 doses. They're not coming back. Let's call. You know what I mean? And so every search warrant that we're doing, we used to never see Narcan. It was always a sign oh, there must be fentanyl or something in the house. But now every search warrant you're seeing multiple used in the garbage cans. You're seeing some sitting on the shelf, cars, people just carrying it around on them all the time that have it around. So to put a number on how many we're missing, I would say a lot.
I'm just thinking the numbers are kind of screwed because, skewed, I think is the word I wanted. Sorry. But I think because they can take care of a lot of it themselves instead of having to call. So I think that our numbers aren't quite accurate as to what the dangers really truly are. I guess is what I'm trying to.
Yes. I mean, because obviously they don't want to call because obviously they have a controlled substance in their house or they had someone show up or a family member. And you also get that embarrassment and that realization of this is really happening or something happened for a family. Maybe it's a son or daughter that the parents don't want to have that attention or different things like that. So that's what kind of sparked this, the rise, and it's just numbers and data, right? Of trying to go for it right and stuff like that. But the rise that we've had just in this year is there.
I'm really naive, but where do you go buy Narcan?
Actually, there's a class coming up here where you can do the class on Narcan and how to give it to people when they have a need, and then you can get some. But that's something that's being put on by humans.
You can also just go to the pharmacy.
Yeah.
You
Pretty
buy it at Walmart or someplace?
I think, well, and then there's places that just have it where you can just get it. So that's one of the conversations for the libraries is should they have Narcan? Because it's a easy place for people to go where they can just get it for family members if they know that somebody's going to overdose or if they have a suspicion. You know, my son-in-law just got some, I said, I didn't. So because if the kids pick something up on the road and has fentanyl on it and they start to react, I want to be able to save them, you know, and I mean, that's kind of where we're at is you don't know what has it anymore on it because it's so everywhere.
Get it at the library.
Well, not yet.
So that just kind of shows the years over the graph. You can obviously see the graph of showing the red on the left-hand side is going to be the heroin, showing heroin going down, and then other opioids going through, which is showing that fentanyl is taking over. That heroin is down. I mean, I haven't seen a heroin lab report come back to us. So like when we collect drugs off the street, we have to send it to the BCA and it comes back as a lab report. So like anything that someone might say they're selling as heroin is coming back pure fentanyl. It's coming back as fentanyl. It's coming back, maybe a mixture, but most of it's all coming back as fentanyl, which is why you're seeing those numbers rise and the heroin drop off and different things like that. And obviously the same with the deaths are despite, obviously that's 21 showing up and going up. The interesting thing I did just see yesterday, a new stat come out that since Terry was just talking about kids and different things and problems and stuff like that, is that we haven't seen a ton of like juvenile kids, like in schools or different things having like that. But there's a new survey that just came out that showed of how many kids are abusing prescription pills and painkillers in school, like starting from junior high into high school. And like the numbers have gone through the roof in the last year or something that just came out yesterday. So, which is a problem because that's where we've seen it go from fentanyl to heroin was starting off on the pills and the opioids and different things like that. As a sheriff's office, this is just kind of a quick little snapshot of how, so this was just taking some hours and some numbers out of the first overdose death that we had in 2023, like investigative hours, like how the time and the different things that go into each one. We had 74 hours of overtime put into one of these overdose deaths. Our analysts had over 33 hours into trying to help process the data and different things and like that. And into the summary of it, like we have obviously like the scene, the death scene search warrant, the processing of the scene, trying to figure out what's going on. And then you get cell phones and you're trying to write search warrants on cell phones to open up the cell phones. The data, once you get that back, is enormous. Obviously, everyone's cell phone is now what a computer used to be. Then you realize that there's social media accounts out there and everyone has a different type of platform that they're using and the different work of the warrants that you have to go through that to get to submit it, then to get the data back and then trying to find these people. No one really wants to talk to you and they're difficult to find. Some of them are in the metro, some of them are here, they're all over the place, and then trying to deal with paperwork and stuff with the county attorney's office to go that route. We're lucky enough to have a county attorney's office that is aggressive with these cases, that is willing to push forward with some different things. Some counties are just, it's an overdose and move on kind of a thing.
So are you telling me if there's an overdose, you're trying to, are you pinning a murder back to somebody that gave that person the?
Correct.
No?
Yep. So technically, as it falls back, as if someone dies of an overdose related death, and it comes back from the ME's report that says cause of death is fatal fentanyl and stuff like that. So you try to pursue the investigation back towards who provided it and even further up to show that it would falls underneath like a murder 3 charge is how it works. We've been having decent success of charging a few with them. Sometimes you don't have any data. Sometimes you do get some. I know we just had some last year where I think there's one being charged right now as we speak out of it from last year's overdose. So it's trying to follow that chain and stuff like that. Just kind of the partnership that we've created with HHS is like, obviously the sheriff's office can help with providing local statistics of the overdoses, current trends relating to heroin, fentanyl, the deaths. Just trying to work with the community and the support and collaborate to build an outreach and services at the county level for all of our citizens and people around here. Any questions?
Anybody?
Are you having any more luck getting into people's cell phones? I know that the phone companies were not allowing that or not helpful.
They're not.
Is it getting any better at all?
Yeah. So yes and no. The part of it is that, so they, obviously the cell phone companies, every time you have an update on your phone, does everything possible to try to keep us out of them, right? That's really the goal, the ultimate, to fix the bugs. To see every time you see an update, it says security, right? So it's constantly changing the different things to keep everybody out of them. But also you have companies like a private company called Cellbrite, which is that we use that as a company that is to forensically download the phone. So like a lot of times it's obviously way easier when you have the password to be able to open it. But now these phones have become so much there. So now Cellbrite came out with a new company called Cellbrite Premium, which is a subscription based of it. And we are having really good luck on being able to get data out of it. But the problem is that the cost of it is so much to have the Cellbrite Premium subscription to be able to try to open it and stuff like that. But like one phone said it was going to take 28 days to try to crack the code, and it did it in 2 days. So it kind of worked that way. The other one said it was going to take 18 months and it took 18 days. So like it's just a variation of how it works, its process to go through that. But obviously, as each day goes on, the phone companies are trying to defeat that process and stuff like that. You have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, I do. So is you paying that as a monthly subscription or half a year, or do you subscribe for a year or get to pay
It's-
and use it?
So it's a yearly subscription is how this is working right now, but like the subscription is based off of how many unlocks that you get. So like for one of those phones, you have, and it's locked, right? So right now, I know the task force has 30 unlocks. It's kind of how they're using it as. So like they're paying a subscription, I think it's $10,000 for 30 unlocks. So you think of how many phones you can have, just one investigation, if they're locked or they're not locked, you know what I mean? You have a victim's phone and maybe a suspect's phone or not, you know, that you have that you're trying to go that way. I mean, it doesn't take long to use 30 unlocks to get it to go. But the nice thing is that the unlocks, that when they're open, when you have the password for it, the data we're getting off of it is we're getting location data, we're getting social media stuff, we're getting a lot of stuff that's worth it to have it.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
Drew, can you explain which phones you go into and how you get permission to access that information?
Into a phone?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like, obviously, like the phone has to have nexus to the investigation. So you have a phone, so say maybe you have a victim's phone, say that's an overdose death. So you have connection into that phone. But to use it, we have to write a search warrant, so that's creating probable cause through the judge. The judge approves it for us to be able to attempt to look and search that phone and go there. So then either we have to send it off or use it to try to download it and then go from there. Then we review the data once that comes back. Is that fair enough?
Thank you.
Yeah, judges take it pretty serious.
Yeah, if you don't have the nexus to it, they're not signing them. Like 10 years ago, judges used to kind of look at you and say, okay, we'll sign it, just look in the phone, go ahead. But now you have to prove that exact nexus based off the crime to the person and then tie the phone into it. Just because someone has a phone, we can't look at it anymore. It's not how that works.
yeah.
So I just got a couple questions about fentanyl itself. And obviously it's cheaper and easier to get than heroin, is why it's on the rise. And is there anything, and I know that's a magic question, that like legislation or something can do? I mean, why is it? I remember when meth, I mean, that was when I was kind of in high school or just there out of, when that was such a rise, and then they really kind of knocked it down with some changes to law.
Yep. And I would say that the legislation made some changes regarding meth labs. I wouldn't say that there's tons of things towards meth, because meth, I would say, is still the number one drug here, and like the accessibility and the flood of it coming up here it's crazy if you really wanted to know. So fentanyl, like I do think as a legislation end of it or something to try to push through these guys is to at least get the fentanyl falling underneath the heroin crime stats, or not crime stats, but under the statute. So like to possess heroin, you can have less for a higher charge of it through like the county for like charging. Fentanyl is still up there at meth right now. So like to get a first degree possession is 50 grams of fentanyl, which I mean, they're selling it by the point. So that's 1/10 of a gram. That's a lot of people that can die on just that. But for heroin, it's 10 grams. Well, we're not seeing heroin anymore. So if they were to change as a legislation end of it to move the fentanyl underneath the heroin, per se, I think would make some change, could help.
So where's the fentanyl coming here from?
China.
China?
I mean, essentially, you know what I mean? Like fentanyl is cheap and they're sending it from China over to into Mexico and stuff like that. And then it's being filtered up into the United States and across the country.
It's being run through the open border.
Do you know how much you have to pay for meth here in the States? Approximately.
Yep. So like for meth,
Mhm.
so like for an ounce of meth right now, you're probably gonna pay close to $300 to $400 an ounce. Or I mean, like to know what a gram of meth right now, I mean, it's just they're pretty much giving it away because there's so much. 10 years ago, you would have paid $1,800 for an ounce of meth. That's how much the change in the flood has come in the different things like that.
I said in on a thing for New Zealand. In New Zealand, it's for a gram, it's anywhere from $200 to $500 for a gram of meth.
For meth?
So they said they're not buying it because it's just too expensive. So it's like, how can we get our prices up there so people won't pay it?
Well, and that obviously changed and
They have to commit crimes to get money.
yeah, and so like the fentanyl obviously it's more, right? You're seeing fentanyl is gonna be about that $200 a gram is what they're making up here. But you drive 80 miles south, you're getting it for $100 a gram. So you can see why people profit by driving to the cities to sell it, to be able to make it to support their habits.
And to piggyback on that, New Zealand, obviously it's more expensive because it's harder to get and or.
Everything's
sell.
harder in New Zealand.
Right, I would assume, right? Like it's an island.
But like you said, if the penalties were a little higher, or, they couldn't, they would, this ain't my wheelhouse at all. That's why I'm asking probably stupid questions. But, like you said, if it was under 10 ounces or whatever it was that you'd 10 grams, then they wouldn't want to haul that much. Is that?
You might get that, right? It just, you're getting somebody that has, say, 3 grams of fentanyl that could be punishable by a second degree or something as just a gross misdemeanor because it's their first offense or something, you know what I mean? Of how the statute and everything lies now is kind of a thing. Like, I think it should fall underneath the heroin. They changed heroin probably 3-4 years ago out of it. And now everything's gone away from heroin because they saw this coming and going on and stuff like that, but we're just not seeing the heroin charge. If that makes sense.
It's scary.
So you see things that I don't want to see. And so Drew, I just want to thank you for what you do because you're helping to keep it safer here. And I like it in my own little world and I don't have to deal with that in my own little world. So it marvels me that you will go do what you do on a daily basis and see the things that you see and still be such an awesome guy. So thank you.
Thanks.
Yes.
Thanks, Drew.
Thank you.
Thanks, Drew. All right, so he set the scene really beautifully for me. I'm Becky. And so now we're going to kind of go over the opioid lawsuit settlement, give you a little bit of background in that, and then kind of go into our ideas of how we want to start to spend the money. We're by no means spending all the money. So, okay. Let's put the power. All right. Want me to just do the whole thing? Cool. All right. So about 2 years ago, the board signed off on the resolution, which basically tacked us as a county onto the state settlement, which every county signed on to do that, which was amazing and great because that meant we ended up getting more funding. It was tied into, if you get every county to just tie into the state, the split of how much money comes into the state, more goes to us. So thanks, guys. So everybody signed off on that. And there we go. So basically it's just funding from all these settlements because people have been harmed. And then we need to try and do something about it. That's how all the money is for. So Drew did a way better job of talking about data, much more thoroughly than this little slide can do. But the one little nugget he doesn't have that we pulled out of HHS data is that 41 out of 50 kids in placement through either HHS or the band have parents who wrestle with substance use. So it is in the Venn diagram of kiddos in out-of-home placement and people who use substances who have kids. It's a not quite a circle, but it's real close. So we know it doesn't just impact the people who are using and ODing, it's the ripple effect of the kiddos, the families, everything. So we perceive it a little more holistically than sometimes the data can illustrate. So we know that those kiddos are also facing a lot of stuff. So just a very brief nugget on the funding because it's really complicated. And thank God for Kelly, because she keeps this in this beautiful spreadsheet and keeps track of it because it's different settlements that are all coming into the state that then trickle down to us. And it's, based off of population and other funding formulas. But some of them are 11 years, some of them are 18 years long, some of them are front loaded. So it's complicated and annoying. But Kelly's doing a fantastic job of keeping track of it. So I'm so thankful for her. So as of a couple of weeks ago, when I made this slideshow, we have 254,000 and some change sitting in a bank account right now, set aside just for this. Theoretically, if you sign off on the new resolution, that's more settlements that are coming in. They still have some settlements that haven't been decided yet. So don't know what that dollar amount is going to look like for those. But so, yeah, it varies. It kind of averages out to about, from the settlements we've gotten so far, about $80,000 a year. So it is a good chunk of change. It is also not like a life-changing amount of change if you think about how massive the problem is. So but it's something, and we can do things for something. Public health is thrifty. So the way the funding works is that first, we bring any ideas to our Chemical Health Coalition. That's kind of our platform for going through ideas, thinking through what would make sense to use the funding. They are very, very clear at the state. The goal is not to just shove the money out and get it out the door as fast as possible. The goal is to really be mindful and intentional of using this money wisely and doing it in a way that, more bang for your buck. Be smart about how you spend your money. So the goal is to not get it all out the door tomorrow. So don't stress out about there's dollars there. We should spend it all. I'll do that. There we go. Another part of the memorandum of understanding or agreement they have is that the public health agency is called out as the chief strategist to just identify, collaborate, and respond to local issues. So I very much appreciate that. It was a surprise to us in public health a couple of years ago when it first started. We're like, oh, really? Okay. But they really do want this to be more prevention focused, more upstream. And obviously we also really enjoy collaboration in public health because otherwise, we couldn't do anything without collaboration. So they want us to work with law enforcement. They want us to work with schools, things that we all generally are used to doing anyway. So we're called out very explicitly as the leads. So it also calls out approved uses. It is inclusive in the language. So it says, these are some examples. It is not you can only pay, it's not explicitly a menu of only these, but it's like these things, and they give a bunch of examples. So there's 3 buckets that they put under the memorandum of understanding or agreement every time. Treatment, prevention, and other. So treatment has things like you can pay for treatment. It is not a very good investment in terms of how much treatment is so expensive for one individual that it's not a great investment in the community. And that's very much where public health is trying to lean into, is more community-based strategies. But you can do things like coordinating, getting people connected in recovery to resources, working with people who are criminal justice involved, working with perinatal population, which is people who are pregnant or around the pregnancy time, caregivers and families. So that holistic view of families. So that's all under the bucket of treatment. Then you have the bucket of prevention, which is things like working with medical providers to prevent overprescribing. I will say our medical systems that we have here are very, very good at that. I think it's because it's been an issue for a while here. So they've gotten really good about kind of self-monitoring and making sure that they're not doing that and they have systems in place. So that is not particularly a concern for us. Preventing misuse of opioids and preventing overdose deaths. So that's things like Narcan and getting that out into the community. You're pointing at me. You have a question? It's okay.
Well, just as you're talking about that, you know, Becky in the previous years has given us some stats on babies that weren't addicted.
NAS babies, yep.
Is that number going up?
Just give me a second and let me look behind me.
Yeah.
It's stable.
Stable. It hasn't gone down. And when I say that, it's because I mean, I don't feel anecdotally it's gone down because sometimes I hear about those and it hasn't gone away. So it makes me think it's stable. It's not increased significantly, but stable.
Which is still a bad number.
Still, and one is a bad number. Because that's not how we want moms and babies to start out their life together.
Yeah. And we have a couple different ways of supporting mamas and babies through child protection, but also through public health. So we do see those mamas and babies and we try and do what we can. And then there's the other bucket. Oh, there's the typo I forgot to change. But the leadership, the planning and the coordination around the grant, it also includes things like, you know, working with the first responders on the secondary trauma of that. So we've had conversations of just saying, what would be helpful? And they all look at me with really big eyes. So I'm like, I don't know. So they're mulling it over. They're thinking about it. But that's another way we could spend the money is supporting them because that is a lot, especially those back-to-back overdoses. And they're all treated like murders. So there's a lot. And I would not want that job. So what can we do to support them better? So if we want to spend the money, how do we do it?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So do you have a connection or do you speak with like our vets? So does she have input where she might notice some abuse? Does that population get addressed too, you know, for our military vets?
Question. I mean, I know Mindy. It's not particularly on our radar. I don't know if it's particularly called out in the MOA either, but it doesn't mean they can't be supported. Obviously, they're part of the community. But it's not particularly on our radar. Not that it doesn't.
Yeah. I think she would be good enough to signal you guys if she sensed that.
Oh, yes.
Might not hurt to reach that.
Yeah.
Population.
So no, good thought. So drawing funds, how do we do that? So step one, we come before you. And you have to either include it in an annual budget or a separate resolution. And since we are not in budget season, it's a separate resolution today. It just needs to indicate it's an authorization of expenditures for the settlement funds and then specify which strategies under those buckets that I just listed out, and then how much money under each bucket. So I will lay out for you just here in a second, each bucket and what strategy is identified and how much we think we'll spend on it this year. So, and it is for a specific period of time, which is the rest of the year. So bucket number one, we have kind of 3/4 buckets. And it falls under the treatment of criminal justice involved individuals. That is a broad definition of criminal justice involved. It's anytime somebody is touched by the criminal justice system. So in this particular moment, it's pre-arrest. So somebody who was using and they OD. Instead of arresting them, they're going to give them a referral to public health. And actually, I'm just going to skip ahead to the next slide because it's going to explain it. The first slide was just the actual language. So they OD, law enforcement responds, they live, they die, there's no referral. But hopefully they live. And then law enforcement sends it to us to do outreach. We can help connect them with services, offer them support, and get them connected to a wide variety of social service supports that we have in the county. And the goal really is first, make sure that they live, number one, and then make sure that they get connected. And it might be, you know, they're not super open to a referral right now to recovery services. Great. Okay. Do you need any help with housing? Do you need any help with getting connected to other county services? Like they can help get them connected if that's what they're open to, in a way that law enforcement just truly does not have the time. to do that. And that's not a knock against them. They're just have a lot of other things they have to go do. And they're not social workers, or nurses or health educators. So that's kind of the first strategy.
So if you came to me and I said, nope, I don't want any of those services, would I then be arrested because I'm not willing to step forward?
Nope. So it might be something where we just nudge again in a couple of weeks and be like, hey, how you doing? Do you need any support? Let me and we'll still provide, one of the pieces in the budget is around supplies. And we want to provide them like information from different providers. We want to give them Narcan, things like that. Because obviously they're at a high risk of ODing again. And no, so they would not be arrested. It would just be a kind of like a diversionary practice of just, hey, we're going to just connect with you a couple of times, give you some stuff, talk to us if you want to. We're here to help. We're also very we're nice and less scary than law enforcement. You're not scary at all, Drew.
Didn't say anything about you, Jeff. No.
But truly, the goal is just be like that. Friendly face, here to help. Let me give you some stuff. And maybe you don't look at it for 2 weeks, but maybe something happens and it triggers, something triggers them to go, you know what, let me take a glance. So getting them that stuff to maybe get them on the next step and be somebody they can call to ask if they have questions. So that's the goal for number one. It is actually based off of something called Narcan Plus or Naloxone Plus, sorry, which is an evidence-based strategy that does exactly this. UOD, you get them connected to somebody who can help them coordinate getting connected to services. And it has shown a reduction in OD deaths. So that's the goal. There we go. The other piece of this also falls under the criminal justice involved folks. But the second piece is working more with the jail. So I'm gonna skip ahead. Whoop, too far. So what would that look like for us? We'll be partnering with the jail to work a little bit more through their intake and do some more screening and education around substance use. They have a video, it turns out. I have not been arrested in Pine County or anywhere. So I didn't know they had a video, but they do. So they're gonna see our friendly faces now when they come visit us. But also providing resources and support upon discharge, which is something that just can be kind of labor intensive as you work through with people. So very similar to the OD of let me give you some supplies. Do you need help getting connected to ABCD as their discharge? And that'll be on a kind of a case by case so that makes sense. Because, a friend who's here for just the weekend because they made really poor decisions at the bar, probably not going to do that sort of coordination of services, but for those who do have those charges against them for substance use or paying on our radar as somebody with substance use would get the referral.
So I think that during the Chemical Coalition, I think that this was the part where we got to where Kevin Glass had said, yeah, I want to come down too. So we've got the sheriff's office. You were talking about how they work so well together. We have the sheriff's office, and we have human services, and now we have probation, and they're all going to group up together to help and work together so that they can make sure that all the services and all the needs are met in that, which was really exciting.
Yes, thank you for reminding me about that, because that's another, that also falls under this bucket of criminal justice involved. They're also being touched by the criminal justice system. So yeah, we can definitely fold them into our referral process and help connect or support them. So that's bucket.
So in that intake screening, did you talk about the scanner?
No, I didn't.
Could you buy equipment?
Buying equipment.
Well, that's a problem because the fentanyl drugs get into the jail sometimes. Body can. So if they have it, you can buy these scanners.
Walk in front of it. And if that's something that could be used, those dollars could be used for, it might help the jail out a lot. And it might create a whole bunch of contacts too. So I don't.
That's a good idea.
I'd have to go back and look at the MOA because it doesn't ping on my mind as like a yes, but also I only know it's like a third document.
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know.
Even if it can help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look, but I don't know. But I will put on a post-it note in my brain to go look. Last kind of bucket, it's kind of a two-prong bucket is so focusing on prevention more, a little bit more upstream of preventing overdose deaths by doing some more education and media work. So we'll be hosting an event that we already started planning in the hopes that you will say yes. Because also it takes a long time to plan events. So community education of hosting an event in Hinkley at the end of April. I have flyers, come take them from me. To just talk about what is happening in the community. How did we get here? So a little talk about trauma and root causes, because I love a good root cause conversation. And also what can we do? So how do you support a family member who has struggles with addiction? How, where can you find Narcan? What does that look like? Because Narcan can be really intimidating. Somebody who's never looked at it, touched it, thought about it, and then you don't want the first time you think about it to be when you see somebody, a family member ODing. So just trying to destigmatize and make it a little less scary for people. And then have lots of vendors there who, recovery vendors, health providers, things like that, to kind of understand. We have quite a few different services and providers in the county, and it's just understanding who exists and where.
When are you going to be bringing that program for approval? Is that part of today?
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
Yes,
good.
And then also just the media campaign that we'll just be working with. So Public Health has their own Facebook page. We have somebody who does our social media. It's just like one of my staff. And just doing more targeted social media outreach and, working with the newspapers or the radio or whatever makes sense. For us, just to get some more information out there to the community about what's happening and what you can do to support family or friends. So we do all those things. Oh, ta-da. All those things that I just told you. So what would that look like for funding? So we're looking at just a smidgen over $60,000. It is very, very much focused on staffing time, just because it takes time for us to actually do the outreach when somebody ODs, wherever we get the referrals from, along with the jail, and then a little bit of time for the community education and media. And then the supplies to actually do the things. So that's where we're sitting for budget. And it is put into the resolution. And I think that's it. That is it. Other questions? I love questions.
Questions? We've been asking them.
Yeah, that's true. You have, which I don't mind.
I got a question.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's in the it's in our packet here, with the resolution 2023-21, part 4. Under E, it says consultation and partnerships. Number 1, it reads, each county receiving opioid settlement funds must consult annually with the municipalities in the county regarding the future use of settlement funds in the county, including holding annual meetings with all municipalities. Did the county notify all the municipalities in our county to let them know? Which
So
is
we're
a
doing
requirement
outreach.
of this, or am I reading it wrong?
So we're doing outreach with all the counties, or all the counties, all the municipalities around our event at the end of April, which is one way we can bring everybody to the table and have conversations. But then moving forward, yeah, we would just be having an annual meeting somewhere.
I guess a follow-up question to that is,
Yes.
did this? It
Sorry.
said, okay.
Becky
When
also
did
just
that start?
mentioned.
When it says it's annually, I would assume when we first voted for this, so that puts it back to, what was the date? When we entered this, I would think did we miss an annual meeting already? Is it an overlook or?
No, so when you signed on, it was just signing on to the state settlement, which wasn't actually nailed down for another 6 months, or we didn't get the first dollar in our bank account until I want to say August.
I think so.
And so the state's even confused about timing of everything. I'm gonna be honest, we're doing annual reporting right now and they're confused. So no, we haven't missed anything.
Okay, yeah, because right now the cities that I spoke to haven't heard of anything yet. So it's going to be when the money actually gets put in the account of Pine County, then the clock starts for this this portion of this where the annual meetings will take place. So they have a fair shake on this where they can.
We also have the Chemical Health Coalition, which is the vehicle of which we're, really bouncing ideas around. And we do have somebody from a city there. that they are also welcome to come in if they want to have a more consistent voice. But yeah, we will be planning an annual meeting.
What city is that?
Hinkley.
It's taking part.
And that's only one city of the entire county?
Oh, anybody's welcome to come to the coalition meeting.
Okay. All right.
We love people.
I think they'd all been invited also.
Oh, yes.
They just haven't participated.
Yes, we try and do a periodic outreach of, please come.
Okay. See it, okay. So you have reached out to the cities.
And the meeting is coming up April.
April 26th. Yep. And so we just nailed down all the details and facts about that late last week. So we're just doing all of our campaign outreach around that this week. Started. So everybody will get flyers. It's on Facebook. We're gonna be reaching out to people left and right.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair,
Yeah, go ahead.
So if you want cities or townships to show up, tell them you're gonna do something about zoning or a parade. But
That was 20.
say also, on our outreach with cities and townships, they don't show up, they don't come, you know, so we tried. And thank you for, just to kind of get back at JJ a little bit, I mean, you've been sending them a lot of stuff and really important to them, and I think it's kind of up to us, if we want to get them there, we got to kind of reach out. That's our job as commissioners, is to reach out to them and hey, they really need to show up.
Mr. Chair, I would just
Yes, I
add,
have, John.
the rollout of this program is just starting, right?
Yeah.
Today is day one of the county board receiving suggestions, recommendations from the Chemical Health Coalition. It's the first time that the county board is considering any expenditures. The first two expenditures, one of them is to host a community engagement meeting to include the cities. So I don't think anyone has missed anything, if that's a concern.
Yeah, we're at the beginning of a new dawn on life here with this thing. This is
Yes.
a couple of years ago at AMC, they were talking about this settlement, trying to get all the counties together to sign this document so we could move forward on a lawsuit. I was a skeptic, thinking it would never happen, and that there would actually ever be money coming into our checkbook of any significance was, I thought, kind of a pipe dream. And it's not going to change the world here, but $80,000 is $80,000. And so if we can develop a program that saves a person or two from this terrible thing in their family, called an overdose death, that's our goal, I guess. I don't know how we measure success.
Well,
Because,
tracking various things.
Yeah.
And figuring out what makes sense in terms of data reporting, because we do have to do reporting every year for the state. And it's just how we spend the money, and we do.
but I think, Sam, if we keep going on this trajectory we're going on, we're gonna have a lot of deaths
Yeah.
from overdoses. And so
Well, and that's,
that's our benchmark, 2022 death toll, or the beginning of 2023. And
right. And that's one reason why we kind of brought this together relatively quickly, was because the sheriff's office actually came to us and said, oh my gosh, this is a lot. What can we be doing, and what can we be doing differently? And they wanted a public health lens on it, because like the sheriff's office only has so much bandwidth and capacity and strategies they can use. So let's try and move a little more upstream. And then hopefully down the road, we can move more upstream into like more primary prevention, which is trying to keep people from using in the first place.
And I think that that's the whole emphasis on the settlement. Public health was going to be the figure outers thing.
Which is fun. It's my jam.
So I think let's take the resolution. If somebody thinks that we should move on that 2023-21.
I'll make a motion to approve 2023-21.
Second.
We got
Matt did it.
Matt,
I'll do the next.
there any discussion, questions on that? If not, Debbie, you want to call the roll?
District 4, Commissioner Waldam.
Yes.
District 5, Commissioner Ludwig.
Aye.
District 1, Chair Holland.
Yes.
District 2, Commissioner Moore.
Aye.
District 3, Commissioner Loprin. Aye. Thank you.
And then the next resolution has to do with the authorizing some expenditures.
I'll move 2023-18.
I'll second it.
Motion by Moore, seconded by Lovegren. Any discussion? Questions?
It's been really good watching how hard you guys have worked to come up with ideas and that just work around this whole thing because it's a huge, I think it'd be a huge thing on your shoulders to try to figure out how to use this money correctly and how it would benefit people. You guys have done amazing. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a pickle.
So Debbie, you want to call the roll?
Yes. District 4, Commissioner Waldam.
Yes.
District 5, Ludwig.
Aye.
District 1, Chair Holland.
Yes.
District 2, Commissioner Moore.
Aye.
District 3, Commissioner Loprin.
Aye.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you.
Are those flyers with you, Sam?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you.
And as long as we have all of you kind folks from Child Protection and out-of-home placement and public health, on the way up here today, I actually was listening to the local radio station and they had the sheriff from across the river on. And she talked about something near and dear to my heart is dementia and Alzheimer's people. To not forget those people, they're not suffering this kind of trauma, but their family is certainly suffering. And if we know people, to try to get them connected with services early on until Jeff has to send a deputy out there to help break up a family dispute or something because mom is not responding to, or throwing a tantrum or whatever. So I thought it was timely.
We're working.
We'll do some commissioner updates. Kettle River policy.
Yeah, we had our meeting on the 9th. That's a long time ago already. Reese gave a presentation on joint powers agreements, how they work, or all the options, and we're just planning how we're gonna go. No decision has been made yet.
But you're getting close to the end.
Yeah, well, that's, so we did our working on our issue statements. And then prioritization mapping. So the plans, yeah, we're getting close, but we have to decide that governorship, how we're gonna do it. I don't know how it's gonna come about yet, but we had it was a good meeting. So we're getting our goals and all that stuff in shape. So I'll have more to say on that when it comes together.
Health Coalition, you got anything besides what we just heard about here?
I think she pretty much covered. Well,
Yep.
yeah. However,
Much covered.
so if anybody is interested, that Narcan training is on April 5th here from 12 to 1. And you just have to go RSVP. It's quick and easy. It's free. Yep.
East Central or Central Minnesota Jobs and Training.
They're just doing an awful lot of training right now and trying to get everybody up to speed as to what exactly they are. They've got a couple things coming up. They've got, I think that they're going there's some people going this summer to promote jobs and training with the legislature in Washington. And they've got a conference coming up in Duluth. It's really interesting. She's so good. Barb is so good at training and teaching and communicating. It's a good group.
East Central Solid Waste, we met last week, buying a new truck and supply chain issues. The engineering staff is there working on the certificate of need, and Caleb, I talked to Janelle yesterday. Caleb got a big kudos for filling out our Pine County's goal volume table. Did a great job apparently. So that's all part of the certificate of need that we need as a landfill to get the permit from PCA to make sure that we got a reason to dig a hole big as we're going to dig it to put garbage in. Library board.
There wasn't much on the agenda for this month. So I had talked to Carolyn, what we did, because we've got 7 new members on the library board this year. So they just kind of went through and did some training and conversation as to what the library system is and what we can do and things to look for and that type of thing. So it was really, that's the new people coming on.
Arrowhead counties.
I did not make that, Mr. Chair.
All right. Mille Lacs Band. We met with sheriff and tribal police last week. Terry, you got anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, I'm just looking for my notes on it. Jeff, you brought up a really good question, and I was thinking about it a lot. We had the 2 sheriffs there. Ogama Township asked if we could do that just to keep communication open. And, they said that the Mille Lacs Band does a really great job, but just, I think that when you've got people that are way out, it's hard for them to get the services and they just want to be seen, I think is a big part of it. But Jeff brought up the question, there's a new thing coming out, and I don't know if you even want to touch on it here maybe, but one of the questions was, if I live on tribal land and something happens to me that, if you live in my house and something happens to you, I can vote for my representatives. I can vote for the sheriff, and I can vote for my commissioner. I can vote for my township people. But if I'm living on trust land, I can't vote for anybody. I don't really have a voice. I've been thinking more and more about that, because there's a lot of people that live on our tribal land that have moved in with families that really don't have a voice if something does happen. And I don't think that anything has happened, but you're right. If it does, where do they go? So I've been thinking a lot about that. So it was a lot of good things that came up and a lot of good conversation. We're going to get it on the schedule so that we'll have monthly meetings again and get that started. So, yeah, it was.
And I wonder if Mr. Chair, I can give a little context to the legislation that Terry's referring to. So under statute, if there's a tribe that wants to form a police department, they can do that. There's, I think, 4 separate sections in the statute that apply, 3 to specific tribes and or counties, and then the general statute. Ours falls under the general one. And all of them require, with the exception of Prairie Island, that there is I'm looking at Jeff, if that resonates or not. I think it's Prairie Island. Require a collaborative or cooperative agreement for policing with the county and or the county sheriff. And so we have that with the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe. Mille Lacs County has a separate statute, but they also have a cooperative agreement with the Mille Lacs Tribal. And that's one of the places that the issue was brought to a head, was several years ago in Mille Lacs County when the county revoked the agreement. And so that has created the impetus or supported the impetus to have a statute change, which would be written so that tribes are not required to have a collaborative agreement with the county or the county sheriff, that they could simply have concurrent jurisdiction through the process of forming a police department. And if they form a police department, they have to meet all the requirements of statute with post-license, data practices, et cetera, et cetera. So there's no shortcuts to the licensing requirements, but it takes the counties out of that mix. And so I don't know if that's helpful to give a little context for that. So if that legislation passes, which presumably will, it's been supported in the Senate committee that was held last week. If it passes, then we are not required to have an agreement with the band. There might be reasons that the band would want to continue in our case to have their agreement. And there are reasons where we might want to continue to have that agreement. So the agreement doesn't go away. It just makes it completely voluntary by both parties.
Thank you.
More to come. Lakes and Pines, we met the other day. I got to sit down and have lunch with Becky, I think, and get educated on funding for housing and homelessness, and I get confused with all that, and I'm sorry, but I've been that way for 10 years and I'll probably still be that way. Anyway, I think under other, I want to talk about last Thursday, I went down with the president from Pine Tech to testify on a higher ed bill. It's a huge bill. It's $100 and some million bill for higher ed to pay for a lot of things, including workforce scholarships, which Pine Tech gets some of that money, including modernization of equipment, of which Pine Tech would get some of that. I think the most incredible thing was they had about 20 testifiers. I was just one of them. Everybody else was either a representative from a trade union or the Minnesota Car Dealers Association, the Pipe Fitters Union, the 49ers, everybody supporting the training that goes on at our technical community colleges. Every one of them said that is the key to economic development. It's a key to our future is to we have to fill the pipeline with trained, technical, skilled workers. And they had a list from nurses to, 20,000 nurses short, 2,000 car mechanics short today. And a lot of those mechanics are my age that are, or a little younger, that are near retirement. We got to backfill those positions. And so it's just, we're at a critical juncture. We need a huge investment in tech colleges. So I thought that was a interesting take on I've never seen that many people from that many walks of life supporting the same thing.
I have a couple others.
Yep.
So I sat in on the AMC did a public surplus for online auctions. And Kelly and Greg were on that too, as far as the forfeited land sales, to see if that would benefit the county. Having been active in the sales, I really wanted to see what they did and how it did. So it'll be interesting to see. I haven't had a chance to talk to them yet to see if that's something that we'll move forward with, but it was.
I went to the one just previous to that on just selling anything on their online auction system. It looked like we use MinBid. This is a more national program.
Okay.
Seemed really slick. I've gone to their website. It's just more exposure.
Right. So we use MinBid for like our
vehicles
and that kind of stuff. So then maybe we want to look at it for more then. So that maybe we'll want to look at the public service then for more.
Right.
Okay. Then I also did, I did do that opioid thing, and it was kind of fun because the presenter is in New Zealand, and it was Matthew Allen, who used to be a doctor in Mora. And so I was like, oh, I've seen you before. And that, so he took a 1 year and went to New Zealand, and then he's going to come back and do stuff here. But it was interesting hearing them say like, there's no fentanyl in New Zealand. They have none over there. Their biggest thing is meth, and it's so expensive that nobody really uses it. They talked about what it is. It's a socialist state. So to get healthcare, it takes like 2 years to get surgery. But if your BMI is over 40, you will not get surgery. They won't help you. So he said they can't do it. They said that for mental illness, we have a lot of mental health things here. And they said for mental health, it takes a long time to be able to get you to be able to see somebody. It could take like up to 8 months or longer. And then you have to drive 3 to 4 hours to be able to get to a service where you can get the help that you need. So they just said it's really, really hard to get the things that people need in New Zealand. So, I mean, you realize then just how spoiled we actually are. We are very blessed with the services that we have. And then the last one is I did the technology and technician, or the TNT committee. And one of the things that they were talking about is there's a lot of imposters that are out there. And so there's a lot of losses to investment scams. And so they were talking, I've got some websites that people can go to. They really want people to turn in any scammers. So there's a website, if you're being scammed, whether it be online or anywhere, that you would go to and turn them in so that they can start dealing with what's going on, because there's so much scamming that's going on right now. And then we talked about the Reconnect program, and they were saying that it's really important that we get that put on the farm bill, because it's going to just help to get broadband here. And we need to upgrade what they'll allow. Where right now it's Minnesota says if you have 25.3 for your broadband, you're doing really good, but that's not good enough anymore. And so they said, talk to your congressman. And I said, I'm going to see Pete Stauber tonight. So we did talk to Pete Stauber, and his meeting was really good. There was vegetable farmers and dairy farmers and cattle ranchers, and it was just very well attended and very good. And it was like a U-shaped room, and Pete sat at a table and people told him what their concerns were. And he talked and said, okay, so, I mean, he was really good about what part of the farm bill do you think that this will affect? And kind of made them work that out so that he knew where he was going with that. So that was a good meeting too.
SNAP is in the farm bill.
SNAP is, yeah, I never thought broadband would be farm bill, but it is, so yeah, that was also a very good meeting, very well attended with a lot of good conversation.
Mr. Chair, I have two.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, can I follow up on Terry's broadband comment? And this was, I just want to pull a number from the Friday update, because you gave the 100 down, 3 up metric as high speed in Minnesota. Of actual subscribers to services, fewer than 20% have that slower speed. That means 80% are above 100 meg, which is just mind blowing.
That have service.
Of people who have service, who actually subscribe, 80% of them are faster than what Minnesota calls high speed.
Wow.
So even if we get to that 100,
We're still low.
that's still not ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
In fact, there's more people who have 1 gig or better than who have 100 meg or less.
They sure beat my 7.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mel.
I'll be quick, Mr. Chair.
Last Wednesday, we had a
The AMC probation meeting, and late in the afternoon. And Julie Ring was there. She had a long conversation. It was a virtual.
Yeah.
She had a long conversation with a meeting with Schnell from DOC, kind of more than an hour. Because DOC gets the funding and stuff, and what it really baked down to was DOC is not going to oppose the probation argument at all, because it doesn't affect them. They just get the funds, but they can get in there and mess it up with the representatives. So they kind of have we'll keep our hands like this, which is a good thing. Anyway, so the funding amount is plus 83 million is the ask in there. We're going to go a little more. It might end up, I don't know what the final is going to be. It might go to 99 million. But the base formula. It's really weird. The formula they're working, the base form, there's gonna be a base formula, which we push for to keep the 50% in there. It's gonna, that language is kind of gonna hang in there. She wasn't sure yet, but the base amount's gonna be in there and it might be equal to the past or something. I don't know. That's gonna, I think it's all written up, but, and then, we had a big discussion on the fees because the governor and that side, they want to eliminate the probation fees. So the probation departments were not really in favor of that because it's like Terry, you know, it's a big thing that helps them as a tool. So we'll see where the dust settles, but I think things are looking good for us to be a lot more money coming into our probation. So it's getting good support down there. And I have one more. We had our Namaji.
Yeah.
One watershed, one plan meeting, and that was to set our second biennium budget, which I'll talk about in that in a second. And to meet the two, there's a new county commissioner, Sue Zlomowski, and then a new SWCD commissioner, Bruce Hikes. So that is a change on that board. And we were going through our budget, and Caleb was at the meeting, and that was an in-person meeting up in Carlton. So we can meet each other too. So we're going through the plans, you know, you have your plans and stuff like that. And it was great that Caleb was there because they're talking about the funding and this and that and the stuff that's gonna apply. And I think I told you before, we did that volunteer STS survey on the cabins and homes around that lake. We just did that here in Pine County because that's our headwaters of that Namaji River. So we didn't make anything mandatory. Caleb just drafted up letters, mailed them out and said, we'll come in if you'll free of charge and check your septics. They got like 30% compliance just right away, so which was good. So then, and when we were in our budget, they were, you know, talking about stuff and there was nothing in there and it's a work in there. So he added some dollars to help become compliant on sewer systems if they said it should fail. Because that's the headwaters of the whole river. So that was a good plus, you know. I wouldn't have thought of that quick on my feet probably. And because we missed some funding.
Yeah.
From, you know, because we didn't use it from our the two we had, sure, 35,000 or something we missed out on last year. So I think Lakes and Pines pulled it back because we weren't using it. So, which is, I don't know how you instigate, you know, that's always my question is how you get these things started. Like when you go out, when we do our Kettle River watershed plan, you're gonna go door to door. I think we're gonna have to have, you know, bring the farmers in and stuff like that.
Here's what I've been wondering. We should get our soil and water people with whoever is doing the work in Lower St. Croix, Namaji, now Kettle River starting up, Snake River. I think we gotta all get together and how is all this stuff gonna get done?
I know, how you even initiate it.
Because Lower St. Croix has a whole, they already have a ag person working in Lower St. Croix who they're banging out these projects, but then it comes back to soil and water.
Yeah.
Who's gonna do the work?
Oh, I think contractors.
Yeah, but the contractors don't fill out all the paper.
Oh, no,
Take it to
that'll
the
happen.
paper.
There's the engineering and all that will happen like it always has.
But Matt, who's gonna collate all that?
Oh, I know, exactly. That's where I'm at. How do you initiate the project and get it? Yeah.
I can see the volume of work going way up.
I think that they're talking that it's still the soil and water people that'll be doing it, because I know with.
That's my fear, Terry.
Yeah, because they're already over.
Because Snake River is gonna have a bunch of stuff and okay, so our soil and water people are gonna have to manage that project.
Right.
They're not doing the work, they're managing it. Lower St. Croix.
Same thing.
Same thing. The Namaji, Kettle River.
Yeah.
So
It'll be prioritized some way for
Yeah.
impact.
But from my experience in the Snake River Watershed Management Board is the money follows if there's money for administration. There's money
yeah,
for-
but we aren't, maybe I'm not asking the right question. I just don't think there's the manpower there to take care of it.
But like what we've done there was a couple times we hired people to manage some of that in the, but
Well, I
like I
think,
said.
I think we gotta talk about that, cause I'm thinking we're not thinking this whole thing through to see projects get done.
So that'd be a good question for Paul.
Yeah,
You know, ask him how he's looking at doing it for Pine County.
If
that's why I'm suggesting we sit down with Soil and Water and say, are we all on the same sheet of music here? Because we've been going to these separate meetings. How often do we ever sit down and say, okay,
I know like at Snake River, we had like Caleb had come with some stuff and then different counties and different soil and waters. So it all kind of depended on what they're working on, where, and I think like if it is enough, that's what's nice about this, is it is a 10-year plan. Like all we ever worked on was 2-year grants, you know, so you could hire somebody full knowing in 2 years, the position's probably gone. So the quality, the level, whatever you had was hard, but we did it and that's how we operated. And it worked good. I think there's a lot of opportunity with this. I'm very excited. I think that, I do think that that'll be, if Soil and Water gets too busy, that means they got too much administrative money coming in and they will hire people.
But you're right, because Bowser doesn't like to have the funds get extended into the next chunk even. So we had a big discussion and there was Aaron was there. But like weather can stop a project, even if it's scheduled and then it ends in, well, we gotta wait till the next season. And then of course the funding is like, well, you already have money. Well, no, that's for this project. But that we discussed, that just takes your document, weather related, these funds are set aside for this project.
Yeah. And we have that where we've got a project that they couldn't do it because of the weather. And so it's labeled as this will happen starting, you know.
Yeah, I.
So it's already spoken for.
Yeah, the big engineering stuff you have to do. That stuff takes so much time too. Like the Kettle River, remember where all those homes were washed out? Now it's that was 2 years plus in the making.
anything else?
Thank you.
If not, we'll declare this meeting adjourned. Thanks, JJ.
Have a good day.